Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Sunday recollection. I'm Zeno Dani. I'm a resident of Banahaw. I'm an independent consultant working on projects funded by World Bank and the ADB, and I'm also an organization development and HR consultant. Okay, so the topic for this Sunday's recollection is about love for the truth. Love for the truth. This pandemic has actually made us realize about the stark realities of life. Some of them are brutal truths of life. The fact that death is real, life is short, our life is very fragile, health is a big issue, relationships are very important, family is something that we have to value a lot, and of course, well, we have to realize that God has created us for a purpose. In this short span of life that we have to discover that purpose for ourselves. No? I'd like to ask each one of you, perhaps at this point in time, to reflect on your own life story. No? So from the moment you were born up to this time, well, that could be perhaps 50 years, 30 plus years, or some could be in their late senior years, 70 plus or what. No? So what's that life story about? No? If you were to summarize, let's say, in a few words, few adjectives, how would you describe your life story? No? And of course, that life story would only make sense if we see it in the light of the truth, the fact that we are creatures, the fact that God has created us, the fact that we have been created for a purpose. No? As I've said, well, this pandemic has precisely brought to our eyes, well, these realities, no? That life has a purpose, no? That we have to live it very well. No? Somehow we can look at the rest of our lives, beginning today, as today being the first day of the rest of our life. No? It's the first day for the rest of our life. No? So how should we live this life in the light of God who's absolute truth, God who's absolute goodness? No? God has actually created us with wonderful faculties. No? We have been given a mind, an intellect, and that intellect which we own as a gift has been designed by God to search the truth. No? And the process of the intellect discovering the truth or finding the truth is what we call knowing. Thus, in our love for the truth, we're actually up for what? Well, seeking, well, the ultimate truths about life, seeking reality as it conforms to seeking reality as it conforms to our life, and our life conforming to reality, and also discovering and accepting many times, okay, the fundamental truths about life. No? That there is a God, that life is short, that, there's good and bad, that life is precisely made for the pursuit of what is truly good. No? So our mind has been designed for that purpose precisely. And that's why we actually experience peace of mind every time we discover the truth about God, the truth about ourselves, the truth about our families, etc. And well, some of you have been actively participating in the Catholic doctrine classes of Father Santos. And I think a common experience is that as you discover realities, truths about our faith, truths about morals, truths about God, you begin to realize, okay, that life, this life that we have is valuable. This life that we have is a present. This life that we have is a gift. And thus, the big question right now is, okay, what have I been doing with this life? No? If today were the first day of the rest of my life, how should I live it before God, who's absolute truth, before God who has precisely given us the road signs, no? The commandments, for instance, in order to be happy, in order to reach that destination that we have, which is heaven. We all know God has created us to know, to love, and to serve Him, and hopefully to enjoy heaven after this life. No? But then for that to happen, we have to make three wise choices. No? That's why besides our intellect, no, which pursues the truth, and the intellect seeking the truth is precisely what we refer to as knowing, God also gave us this powerful gift, which is the free will. Free will. No? The free will has been also created by God in the sense, in a way that, okay, it seeks the good. And the free will seeking the good, that process is called loving. Okay? When we love someone, we actually will or we want the good for that person. And that's also a big reality, a basic reality in our life, a truth that we have to accept. No? If we truly love someone, if we truly love God, we will only seek the good, no, for ourselves. Obviously, God doesn't need anything because He's perfect. No? But as we seek to know God and as we seek to love God, we're actually beginning to become what? No, become better persons. No? Saint Josemaria said, "Well, we have to live our lives striving to be other Christs, alter Christus." And then he went beyond. We also have to strive to be ipse Christus, Christ Himself. No? Christ Himself. And precisely when he founded Opus Dei in 1928, with his universal call to sanctity, which is as old as the gospel and yet as new, because many people still perhaps haven't discovered, haven't realized the fact that we have been called to sanctity. No? So that call to sanctity precisely is what? Well, it's a call to love God, to live our lives, to pursue what is truly good. That's using our mind and our will. We have to live our lives pursuing what is truly good, no? What God wants for each one of us. No? And thus, love for the truth is something that is innate for us. No? Even the fact that we have a mind that seeks the truth, a mind that seeks the truth, and a free will that seeks the good. No? And in anything that we do, the decisions that we make, which somehow these present decisions that we make determine the quality of our life now and in the future. Those decisions have to be guided by what? Well, guided by precisely what is truth, what is good, what is beautiful, no? The transcendentals as referred to. No? I teach business ethics as a part-time staff of University of Asia in the Pacific, and in my previous class, I asked the students who are mostly IT professionals. These are students of the MSIT program of UANP. So I asked them, okay, what were the biggest lessons that you learned from 2021, especially this past almost 2 years of the pandemic? And they said, okay, well, most important thing is relationships, the family, no? Then the importance of health, no? And of course, well, perhaps it's something which is implicit, okay, the importance of taking good care of one's spiritual life, one's relationship with God, one's relationship with God. And that relationship can only be nurtured precisely through prayer, which is conversation with God, conversation with God. So the process of discovering the truth about our faith, discovering the truth about our own lives, no? Well, what God wants from our lives, no? It's a process where we have to be involved personally, having that conversation with God. No? And at times, okay, with the help of, well, perhaps a spiritual coach or a spiritual director. No? In Banahaw, for instance, we have, Father Santos, who is a spiritual coach to many people. And in the process of seeking, for instance, the truth about ourselves, no? Areas of improvement, areas of development, no? Well, we need sometimes a confidant, a coach who can help us precisely navigate the difficulties of our lives. No? And we've seen this, especially during this pandemic. No? We've seen how people precisely perhaps have lost their bearing, have fallen into, well, depression, have fallen into all sorts of mental illnesses. No? And in many cases, well, perhaps the biggest solution is that, going back to the basics, no? Going back to the purpose of life, well, finding someone who could help, oneself, well, rediscover the beauty of, one's relationship with God. And of course, asking God for all the needs, all the necessary things that we need precisely to live our lives as He wants it, to be truly good as persons. No? We know nowadays, for instance, without the benefit of, a strong, solid spiritual life, without the benefit of a spiritual coach, without the benefit of a solid doctrinal formation, it's easy to get swayed. No? It's easy to get lost. No? Because let's face it, well, the forces of evil work 24/7. I mean, they're around 24/7. The devil never takes vacation. The devil, who is the father of lies, contrary to truth, no, will do everything precisely to distract us, to drive us away from God. And thus, we, in our part, as serious persons who want to take our life, our faith, our family obligations seriously, we too have to make good use precisely of this life, this time that God has given us. No? And thus, the search for the truth is something that should be a priority in our lives. No? Okay, well, most of us, if not all, are professionals. Some of you perhaps already retired, and over the past years, you have actually acquired very solid skill sets. No? Okay, you're somehow consultants, no? Perhaps to your own businesses or to other companies, no? But wait a minute, okay, we also can actually use the skill sets we have acquired throughout the years, no? The skill sets, in making sure the company runs well, people are managed properly, resources are managed judiciously. Those skill sets that we have acquired can also be used to manage our life, no? To help precisely seek the truth, no? The realities that we should conform our lives to. Well, for instance, in most cases, companies, for instance, would espouse a set of corporate values. No? There was a point in time when I was in the University of Macau, where I taught for almost 16 years. I came back here actually 2019. I did research, informal research with one or two of my graduate assistants. I asked them, okay, can you survey the top 100 companies in China? Look at their corporate values, no? And see what are what those values are. No? And well, whatever was published online, we discovered that the more common and perhaps the most common value stated in their core values statement is the value of integrity. Integrity, being one. Well, that means avoiding duplicity. It's related to honesty. It's related to sincerity. As you see, even in the pursuit of a company's goals, vision, and mission, values actually serve as solid road signs. Values precisely point to how people should behave. Well, businesses should be done, decisions should be made, relationships nurtured on the basis precisely of those values. No? Well, we know too well that okay, many times those values are just perhaps posted in a wall or kept somewhere else but not lived. And thus, when we look at it, okay, love for the truth is something not just cerebral. It's not just something that remains in the mind. No? Love for the truth has to be practiced. More so specific, more so when it comes to the values that relate to our life, to our faith, to our morals, and how all these things affect or play out in our personal life, family life, professional life, etc. So, well, in pursuing the love for the truth, again, these virtues are very important. Integrity, unity of life. Saint Josemaria, well, advised people, okay, the importance of living unity of life wherever you are, practicing the Christian virtues, no? Practicing the teachings of the church wherever you are. And many times, okay, perhaps that's the challenge, no? People leave their Christian values or their beliefs, no, on the door of the company, but inside, okay, nothing happens, no? Which perhaps tells us, okay, that faith is being lived. And the challenge precisely is that, okay, for a person who is a Christian, a Catholic, to live his faith, to live the realities of his faith, the truths of his faith, 24/7, wherever he is. No? Obviously, it's something challenging. It's something very difficult. Perhaps something which is a dream for many. But well, if we want to precisely conform to God's will, to live the reality of Christian life, well, our choice is that, no? To live our Christian values, our commitments 24/7. That's why, again, okay, we would need the support of, a confident spiritual director, a spiritual coach, and in many cases, okay, a support group. No? It could come in the form of, in some cases, well, the cooperator circles that some of you already attend. No? And if you're not yet a cooperator of Opus Dei, well, you can just simply check your friend, for instance, ask your friend, well, how can I become a cooperator of Opus Dei? Or you can also check the website of Opus Dei, which will tell you what it means to be a cooperator and the benefits of being a cooperator of Opus Dei, being a cooperator of Opus Dei. And again, going back to these virtues, well, we need these virtues. No? We need these support groups. No? We need this confidant who can help us precisely navigate our life, no? Settle issues, no? Settle ethical dilemmas, no? Or perhaps some doubts which will allow us precisely to live peacefully. Now, one point in time during my professional life, I was giving us I had a chance to talk to some official of a government institution, and well, good enough during that time, this official told me, well, they did a study on corruption. I'm bringing up corruption because love for the truth is destroyed precisely by corruption. whether it's personal, whether it's community, whether it's societal corruption, whether it's global corruption. And well, talking to this person who was engaged in the study, he told me they discovered three components of corruption. And what are these three components of corruption? Perhaps you've already heard me talk about this, no? But it's something very powerful as a discovery, as an idea. Well, the first component of corruption is attraction. Is attraction. And this guy told me, okay, well, what are the usual attractions of corruption? Wealth, power, pleasure. And these precisely correspond to the concupiscences of man. Well, our weaknesses, which precisely destabilize our pursuit of the truth. No? What are these concupiscences? No? So the lust of the flesh, which is the disorderly pursuit of power, the lust of the eyes, the disorderly pursuit for wealth, and the lust of, well, the pride of life, the disorderly pursuit for power. Of course, perhaps you realize, well, these things sound very familiar, especially when we talk of politics. And this is something which we'll always discover. In any form of corruption, these attractions always come out. They always surface. No? Power, pleasure, and then wealth. No? Per se, they're not bad, but disorderly pursuit of these things precisely make a person bad and make the actions of people bad. No? And then the second root of corruption after attraction, those attractions caused by the concupiscences, is rationalization. People who are corrupt tend to rationalize. And what are the usual rationalizations given? Well, anyone who tells a lie precisely rationalizes, justifies. When someone says, well, I don't believe whatever you say, my truth is my truth, no one else's. Okay, I create my own truth. And the moment people tend to justify their lives based on, some of those precisely doubtful beliefs, that's, again, an indication of rationalization. In the area of corruption, what are the usual rationalizations? Well, it's industry practice. Everyone does it anyway. Or, well, it's natural to men, natural lang sa lalaki. Especially when you talk of vices, Or, well, the boss also does it. So everyone should do it. I remember talking to another person. I won't mention who or where or whatever, but anyway, a very important person at that time, well known to many, and he told me the following. While you're on your way going up, let's say, for instance, in a business, you have to play dirty, he said. Because otherwise, if you don't play dirty, everyone else is playing dirty, and you'll end up left out. And then he said, as soon as you get up, meaning you become the number one or the top organization or top business in that industry, you have to play clean because everyone will be looking at you. Every move that you take will be analyzed. Every move that you take will perhaps, especially these days, it will appear in social media, especially if you flounder. And your own PR group perhaps may not even be enough to cover up what you have done. But anyway, okay, going back again to that, okay, people tend to rationalize, especially when it comes to, well, sins they have committed, especially sins against the sixth and ninth commandment, or sins that relate to honesty, etc. People tend to rationalize. So attraction, rationalization, and what's the third? The third component of corruption, the occasions. So attraction, rationalization, occasions. And what are the occasions of corruption? Well, times there are the corrupt people that surround an industry. They're the corrupt people that disrupt an industry. They could also be the corrupt businessmen that only manage businesses, or the only strategy they think is, okay, well, to engage in corrupt practices. Obviously, we cannot deny that sometimes, okay, some people precisely use extortion, extort money from these people, making life difficult for those who want to do good business or those who simply want to live a simple, peaceful life. That there are those precisely that, those corrupt people who form part of the occasions of corruption. Sometimes some industries are also more difficult, or some institutions are also more difficult when it comes to, let's say, living an ethical or truthful life. There have been attempts in some organizations, for instance, to obliterate corruption, bringing in, young fellows, bringing in people with ideals, etc. But in the end, well, these people get swallowed by the system. But does that mean that, okay, people have to give up? Not at all. No? In a recent class with my business ethics students also in graduate school at UANP, well, someone was narrating about her experience, no? Her experience in a certain institution. And the way she narrated her experience, she was sort of left with only two choices, no? Regarding that institution and the dealings that she had. It's either, she decides to stay in that institution and get swallowed by the corrupt practices in that institution, especially by the powerful ones, or she decides to leave that institution and therefore, okay, avoid the occasions of corruption and live in peace. No? And then I was telling the class, okay, perhaps in between these two extremes, there must be a way of, trying to, be a positive influence in that particular place, no, living an honest, sincere, truthful life, especially in that place, no. And that's what also Saint Josemaria told us. Okay, well, we have to sanctify the world, and sometimes, okay, the world may be difficult because of this and that, but well, the world is not necessarily evil, no. It's the sins of man that cause us precisely to fall into evil. So we have to avoid those occasions of corruption in order to avoid the attractions. And therefore, thus, when we avoid attractions, we don't have to rationalize. Lastly, let me just give you a few pointers. No? Well, how can we live a truthful life? No? I think we have to have this solid conversation with our Lord, living a plan of life. Saint Josemaria proposed to us a plan of life. Prayer, okay? The sacraments, no? Mortifications. No? Life of prayer is very important. Conversation with God, because Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And the truth will set us free. If we are in constant conversation with God, if we refer ourselves to Jesus whenever we have difficulties, it's easier precisely to live a truthful life, because our mind is set to seeking the truth, our free will is set to seeking the good. And then, mortified life. We have to live the spirit of sacrifice. Christ himself died on the cross. No? Christ redeemed us through his cross. No? The same way, if we want to redeem ourselves, if we want to find the truth, if we really love the truth, sometimes it may entail sacrifices. No? The fact that we have to give up some practices, give up some vices, no? Reconcile ourselves with our family, etc. Those changes that we have to make. Many times those things involve mortifications. No? And then lastly, we need to concretize actions, no? By talking to our spiritual coach, our spiritual director, living that plan of life, no? Also being more actively involved in the lives of other people by being of service to them, being useful to them through our outreach services, no? Through our volunteer work with our friends. We can actually live a more committed life, focused precisely on loving God, loving Jesus Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the life. Well, just to end, I'd like to encourage you all to attend the doctrine classes. No? If you haven't done so already, the doctrine classes of Father Santos. Well, those are wonderful classes where you can get to know more about the truth, about our wonderful Catholic faith, about morals, and how those truths can be applied in our daily life. No? Well, these classes have changed a lot of people, and they continue to change a lot of people. There are 3 schedules that these classes are given. Well, there's a Monday class, there's a Thursday class, and there's also the more popular Saturday class. So don't forget to get in touch with our center, Banahaw, for those doctrine classes. So again, thank you for attending this recollection, and hopefully next time you could bring some of your friends to get in touch and find time to discover the truth, find time to pray, and find time to be with us in this Sunday recollection. Thank you.